True North Reviews, True North Reviews, True North Reviews.
Hey there, welcome to True North Reviews. My name is Ryan, and today we are discussing Imploding the Mirage by The Killers. This is the sixth studio album from the Las Vegas rock band, a group that have captured the hearts of music fans across generations. In 2020, The Killers are among a handful of rock bands that might not be given the A-list status compared to the Chili Peppers or Foo Fighters, because they've obviously had a bit more time for their legacies to cement, but I'm sure if you play Mr. Brightside enough, The Killers have their own legacy too, as off in the distance there's more than likely a flock of white girls congregating and dancing to that song right now, maybe including my dad too. See, blurring the generational lines. Now, as much as Brandon Flowers, the lead singer, is probably sick of performing that song, the group is now back with a new album. Some fans might remember that this is the first material to collectively drop from The Killers since 2019's non-album single Land of the Free. Along with the track's release, The Killers announced that a new album was on its way, but fans would have to be patient as it wouldn't be finished until 2020. And now, 1 year later, fans have had to be even more understanding of a late August release, as yes, Imploding the Mirage, the new album, is here, but not without first experiencing some setbacks and delays due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Kind of unavoidable, as many artists are facing the same issues of promoting and even finishing their albums. This project was originally slated for a second quarter release, but that aside, I'm more interested in seeing how The Killers would handle this pandemic music release problem, since they always seem to tour extensively on the heels of each record. And for a band with as big of a sound and style like The Killers, I can only imagine that they too are itching to get another fix of live performance. Now, while it's still not clear when they'll be able to return to the stage in front of sold-out arenas and stadiums, The Killers, they unfortunately just might have to settle for this record being more or less an auditory experience. So with that change in mind, there are kind of a flurry of other changes and challenges along with Imploding the Mirage 2. First off, lead singer Brandon Flowers has moved to Utah for the sanity of his wife, very clearly caring for her happiness and where she wants to be, maybe not always Las Vegas. Secondly, The Killers are again without their lead guitarist Dave on this album, and naturally that's when people start to count them out because they don't think they can write a good record without him. But you know what? The band said no guitarist, no problem. They went out for one song and they snagged Lindsey Buckingham from Fleetwood Mac, who contributes an incredible solo for the lead single, Caution. Not only does that guitar solo feel improvised, but it still complements the melody. That's the best kind of guitar solo you can have, at least in my opinion. Now, if we're mentioning best, everything about this single, Caution, is the best on the record. It is so infectious. The melody, the dazzling performance, the caption-ready lyrics, the expansive spacing. Caution, in my opinion, is easily The Killers' best single in years, and I would say it's even special enough to go toe-to-toe with their greatest songs in their back catalog. Now, for the rest of the singles on Imploding the Mirage, it's much of the same story. They're all great songs. However, I realize for some, even including myself after first listen, The Killers are pretty derivative of arena rock, U2 and Heartland rock, Bruce Springsteen. Granted, much of The Killers' identity has always had a tip of the cap to the boss, but this time it just felt a little more obvious. That's especially the case when we're talking about My Own Soul's Warning and Dying Breed. We have the bells on there, the whoas in the outro, just classic Born to Run era Bruce. But rest assured, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. The influence may be worn on the sleeve, yes, but a good imitation of prime era Bruce Springsteen with a catchy melody and decent production, it's still good music to me, and that's what eventually convinced me that the singles could still be great beyond the obvious influence. Now, notably, the only single that doesn't sound Bruce-inspired, as I have one of his records behind me, is Fire and Bone, which caught me off guard again, but for a different reason, this time sounding like the odd man out. With a funky bass line, the freakish and quirky vocal deliveries, even the sound play between the synths and and the bottle pops, everything was very Talking Heads, but I'd eventually get past that influence for the same reason that I just mentioned with The Boss, and I would enjoy Fire and Bone. Okay, so moving past the singles, we know they're great, but we also want to know what else the Killers had up their sleeves for the rest of Imploding the Mirage. One way they pleasantly surprised me was with features, which, okay, that's cool with me. It's something that I find a lot of rock bands really don't do much of these days, and I don't know if they're doing that to avoid the feature fetish of what it's like to be in hip-hop, but the Killers, they take the risk and they try it out on a couple tracks at least, no harm, no foul. Now, I already mentioned the guitar solo from Lindsay, but we have Katie Lang and Wiseblood making appearances on the tracks Lightning Fields and My God, respectively. Honestly, both features bring a lot to the table, a lot of chemistry as well. I personally give the slight edge and preference to the Wiseblood track since it sounds like the Killers gave her more to do, making it feel a bit more like a true collaboration instead of a smaller feature. Whether Wiseblood has the melodic focus or is simply a harmonic backdrop to Brandon, her eerie and reverbed vocals are felt throughout the entire song length. My God almost makes me believe her and the band recorded together, while Katie Lang might have had to send in her vocal takes separately without going into the studio to record. It's unclear if that's true, I'm only speculating, but because of the nature of COVID making it difficult to finish this album on time, it's easy to think that way. That being said, Katie still has a phenomenal performance on Lightning Fields that greatly calls back to her Case Lang Vare's work in 2016. Really, the sentimental value of Lightning Fields is beyond heartfelt. Brandon singing from the perspective of his father, dreaming to be with his mother, who Katie portrays and reassures that the love and truth between the two will live on no matter the things regretfully left unsaid. Now, I talked a little bit about the features there, but it's also surprising to see how collaborative this album got to be as a whole and how the band overcame the numerous delays upon its release. Most notably, having producers like Sean Everett, Jonathan Rado of Foxygen fame, Alex Cameron helping out with the songwriting here and there. With these well-respected cast and crew, I can praise the Killers for not only conquering the delays, but for the quality of the final product too. With those names I just mentioned, there is a remarkable improvement in the production on Imploding the Mirage. When parts of the previous Killers album felt lifeless and lacking explosiveness, Jonathan Rado and Sean Everett just put a larger sound on everything here. Now, that's not meant in any way to throw Jackknife Lee under the bus. He is a great producer in his own right. I just found that this time round, the Killers were made bigger. Their sound is filling the space it deserves. For example, take the tracks Dying Breed and My God. They both have what sounds like a cannon firing off in the distance. That seriously gives me Simon and Garfunkel vibes. Either that, or I'm at a Columbus Blue Jackets game. What is equally impressive though is how the producers on Imploding the Mirage are versatile. They keep their techniques varied, almost keeping you guessing at what's coming next. The song Running Towards a Place, for example, is lightly produced. Compared to the rest of the tracks, it might not be as punchy or dense, but it's still a notable deep cut. Meanwhile, Blowback has a well-timed, silky, smooth guitar interlude and a tune that hangs in what feels like mid-air. That's especially true with the angelic choir outro. Now, not everything is amazing on Imploding the Mirage. Much like the previous Killers record, I think the band lost some focus with the songwriting on the back half, as the final two tracks on here are easily the most underwhelming. And sure, while the title track is theatrical and it's a decent grand finale, I just can't help but to feel the tune is very corny for the Killers. Frankly, I think they'd be better off giving this to the cast of High School Musical to sing. And lastly, When the Dreams Run Dry, I really don't know what the hell this song is. It honestly starts as one thing and ends as another. The second leg being much more enjoyable, actually. I just don't understand why it's so caught up in the notion that the first leg is any good. Like, yeah, I admire the lyrical nods to Acapulco Bay, but the production is a complete and utter mess. The synthesizers sound thin, Brandon's vocals are way too loud in the mix. It worries me how this was ever given the green light on the album. Okay, negatives aside, Imploding the Mirage is still a solid entry into the Killers' discography. The highs on here are very high. Altogether, we have the roaring return of the guitar minus Dave. We have some energetic tempos being set by Ronnie Vannucci on the drums, as per usual. And of course, we have the vocal chops of Brandon Flowers. I don't think he's in a rush to go anywhere anytime anytime soon. His pipes and towering lead melodies are rarely ever in doubt. So with all that being said, I am feeling a strong 7 to a light 8 out of 10 on Imploding the Mirage. This is a very good album for The Killers. Now, there you have it. There's The Killers album review for today. Make sure you guys continue the conversation down below in the comments. Tell me what you think of this music, whether you agree, disagree. I'm here to engage with you guys. If you'd like to leave a like, subscribe if you're new in town, I'd appreciate that. As always, thanks for watching and have a rockin' day.